In the case of Rishi Sunak, there's some astonishing information that I'm just longing to tell you. Here it is. Rishi Sunak has family ties to a technology partner of the World Economic Forum. So this is not conspiracy theory. This is conspiracy fact. You might say, oh, the WEF, really, it's just, they're just put on these conferences. Well, look who attends those conferences. Look at the goals and the agenda of the institutions and groups that attend that conference, and look at what's happening in the world. See if you see a corollary that has advocated for a Chinese Communist Party style economy complete with trackable digital identities and currency. So already he has literal ties to a technology company that advocates for something that I imagine most of us would be resistant to, regardless of what we claim our political persuasion is. You might be on the left, you might be on the right, you might be pro-Brexit, pro-Trump, you might be anti-Brexit, anti-Trump. Do you want social credit scoring up the wazoo so that your every transaction, your medical decisions, and indeed your currency, we made a video about that recently, have a look at that one, all become increasingly centralized? Surely you can see that's the way it's going. Surely you can see the way that new protest laws are being ushered in our country, the UK, the way that the trucker protests were shut down, the way that they were smeared, slurred, had bank accounts frozen, that centralization and control being exerted through the state somehow because it's compassionate and anti-Nazi appears to be the way things are going. Well, what does this Prime Minister mean? What do these ties mean? What's it going to mean for you? The father of Sunak's wife, Akshata Murthy, is the founder of Infosys, an Indian information technology company that provides services to a host of Fortune 500 companies and banks. Infosys is listed as an official partner of the World Economic Forum, the WEF, which has been accused of seeking to develop the technological infrastructure to implement a global social credit score system. Now, I don't even think that they think they're evil. I'm not suggesting that they're evil. I think that it's a form of new technocracy that will find itself ultimately expressed in the form of technological dictatorship, where the data does the thinking for you. Sorry, we cannot permit you to travel. Oh, it seems you're responsible for wrongthink. I'm afraid that you will not be permitted to travel. Infosys president Mohit Joshi has penned articles for the site in favor of digital banking, which provides the technological framework for the social credit score system the WEF has come under scrutiny for attempting to effectuate across the world. Okay, so there you go. There's a deliberate, definitive tie between Rishi Sunak and the WEF in the form of Infosys, owned by his wife's father. That's before we get to Rishi Sunak's financial life and financial history. Experts say Sunak has not been transparent with his finances and that his hedge fund background raises questions about his commitment to fighting tax avoidance. Again, these are ordinary, normal practices in the world of finance. Having hedge funds is acceptable. It's certainly not anything that is criminal. We're just talking particularly about a man who is now charged with the social responsibility of running a country and doing what's best for a country, the vast majority of whom are not multimillionaires or billionaires or investors. What does his background, his class, and his affiliation with certain organisations tell you? Sitting on a combined wealth of £730 million, Rishi Sunak and his wife Akshata Murthy have a fortune which is around twice the estimated wealth of King Charles III. That's the person who's in charge with helping the poor people of this country. Oh, also, he's heavily tied to the WEF. So, to paraphrase Butch and Sundance, if the fall don't kill you, the drowning will. The Chancellor's extensive property portfolio is just one source of his wealth. After studying at Oxford University, Sunak went on to work for US investment bank Goldman Sachs for 4 years. He left to pursue a business degree at Stanford University in California, where he said influential figures in the multi-billion US tech industry left a mark on him. The mark of the beast! When the idea of public assemblies, new forms of democracy are discussed, people are very dismissive. You can't change anything. This is the best way of doing things. Do you know why they say that? Because if there were true forms of democracy, where you could run your own community, schools, hospital, where there were voted for assemblies, where people democratically discussed what to do with community budgets independently, where laws were formed locally, acted upon communally and consensually, it wouldn't be possible for Oxford and Stanford graduates, former employees of Goldman Sachs, affiliates of the WEF by design and by interest and by shared agenda, to rise continually to power all over the world. Nothing good can come out of these systems now. It doesn't matter if the people in charge change their tie colour or even the colour of their skin or their sex. It's not the solution. If you listen to Jeffrey Sachs in our brilliant interview talking about the military-industrial complex, what he calls the war machine's agenda being pursued for the last 30 years, it's clear that it transcends party politics. You can watch it for yourself, you can listen to it for yourself. What you can see is powerful interests align and are able to transcend democracy. We have to address and change the institutions themselves if we're to interrupt this process. That's just what I think. Let me know what you think in the chat. From there, Sunak had a stint working at a hedge fund back in London. He was a partner at the Children's Investment Fund, which sounds like a good thing, doesn't it? Right, I've not read this yet, but I hear Children's Investment Fund, well, you're investing in children, you're helping children. It's not to like somehow mess with children, right? So that's going to be a good thing. Let's find out. Where he's believed to have made millions of pounds from a campaign that helped trigger the 2008 financial crisis. Remember all that poverty, that devastation, all the political bifurcation and chaos that came from that time? Yes, it was one of the best times of my life.
Soaring gas prices, falling home prices, and rising unemployment.
Sunak then left to co-found his own firm, Theleme, which had an initial fund of £536 million and is also registered in the Cayman Islands. Oh, what? What, you think registered it in the Cayman Islands to somehow avoid tax or not pay tax in legal ways? You know. He placed the investments he held from his years of working in finance into a blind trust, which is what we're expected to give the powerful. Such agreements are intended to avoid conflict of interest by handing over control of assets to a third party, but they don't necessarily come with any legal mechanism to prevent the owner of the assets actually dictating what happens. Blind trust! Keep saying it to yourself till you have it for the operations of these powerful forces. Blind trust that the WEF, this big tech company, hedge funds, Goldman Sachs, political power, Oxford University, all these institutions of power, these same words that you hear again and again and again all over the world, don't have any connection to your life and your poverty. If you wanted to define the WEF in the least conspiratorial terms, you could call it a smokescreen that helps billionaires present themselves as philanthropists with funds that are one day going to help people, when in fact their money is held in blind trusts and offshore tax accounts, while they talk about how we have to change and treat people fairly and respect individuality, which, by the way, I totally believe that we should. Meanwhile, they keep all their money in blind trusts and Cayman Islands. This is how power operates. These are the symptoms and the symbols of true power. This is not just conspiracy theory. These are the markers of what happens, because real power, as you know, is not in Congress. Real power, as you know, is not in Parliament. Real power is corporate power. Real power is global. They have their own seam, their own theme, their own air. Occasionally it breaches and you see it when they have parties while you're locked down. But this is how it's organised. Legal ways of not playing by the rules. Sunak has refused to disclose whether he will profit from a surge in the share price of the COVID-19 vaccine manufacturer Moderna, one of the biggest investments held by the hedge fund he co-founded before entering Parliament. I suppose he's refused to disclose because the information so good, the information about what went on with that COVID vaccine, that if we knew, it would just blow our minds. During the pandemic, billionaires such as Enar Narayana Murthy, which is his father-in-law, of course, saw their wealth increase. Murthy's fortune was up 35% to 2.3 billion in 2021, while inequality between the richest and the poorest grew. Don't worry though, because we can all come together to protest legally. Britain, like the United States, has a long history of civil rights and opposing power. And luckily, in a democracy, you can always be sure that you'll be able to oppose power freely. Same way they got their Cayman Island funds and their blind trust, we'll always have the right to take to the streets and make our voices heard. As PM Sunak reappointed Suella Braverman as Home Secretary, Braverman, before resigning for a breach of ministerial rules, pushed through a last-minute amendment to a widely criticised anti-protest bill that would allow her to apply for injunctions against anyone she deemed likely to carry out protests that could cause a serious disruption to key national infrastructure, prevent access to essential goods or services, or have a serious adverse effect on public safety. The proposal would also give police the power to arrest anyone they suspect of breaching such an injunction, which is a law so vague that it could include anything. Oh, that could affect safety. That could affect commerce. Also, a protest is meant to be disruptive. It's good if it doesn't annoy the very people that it's trying to get on side, I would contest, but it has to be a disruption, otherwise it's not a protest. Essentially what they're saying is, Shut up! According to Liberty, the amendment will effectively give the Home Secretary the power to clamp down on protests as and when the government chooses. Well, I'm sure they wouldn't misuse that power. Just look at Canada, where they didn't misuse that power.
National emergency now to end the trucker protests.
This will have devastating consequences for dissent. The only option we have now is dissent outside of ordinary political spheres. Within political spheres, power has been co-opted and captured. Within media, power has been co-opted and captured. Our only chance is to organise together, to look beyond cultural differences and unite against centralised power and demand real democracy. Other measures proposed in the bill include giving courts the power to issue serious disruption prevention orders, which can ban individuals from attending protests. Amnesty International said the proposed law would go further than similar legislation in Russia by giving courts the power to issue them without a conviction, bypassing judicial process, bypassing jury, magistrates, any ability to form a conversation beyond even what, wait for it, Russia, led by that maniac, that cancerous, cadaverous, insane imperialist Putin himself. And I'm not saying he's not any of those things. Maybe he is. But also, this is worse than what they do in Russia. The range of conditions that can be imposed on individuals under the orders include 24/7 GPS monitoring and restricted internet usage, control, power, the ability to regulate with a stranglehold the actions of a vast population in order that you can pursue your globalist agenda more freely. Police would be given powers to stop and search people or vehicles even if they have no reasonable grounds to do so, even if a senior officer believes protest offences are likely to take place in an area. I believe a protest could take place in this area. Let's arrest all these people. But what if they take us to court? They can't take us to court. So, what we observed in Canada and were disgusted by, legitimate trucker protests, which it's now admitted were not violent and never supposed to be violent, were just used to bring about the possibility to introduce emergency laws, although that was blessedly blocked, is not just isolated to that region anymore. It's truly becoming a globalist agenda. Do you see? Please, I'm not going mad, am I? Are they doing the same thing all over the world? So, shutting down protests, WEF-style leaders, financial tyranny, social credit scoring, a global agenda. Oh my God, all those people that we thought were conspiracy theorists and whack jobs, and hey, say maybe some of them were, a little while ago, said a lot of things that are starting to become just things that should be in the news because they're actually happening. Why do you think they're not in the news?